Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Lees and here are today's top stories. Spain accuses Morocco of blackmail after thousands of migrants entered its port city. The government reveals plans for a new public rail operator, Great British Railways, in the biggest shake-up in decades. And a police chief admits he would prefer his loved ones not to travel on smart motorways as an inquiry into their safety continues. Spain's defense minister has implied that Morocco allowed thousands of migrants to enter the Spanish port city of Ceuta as a form of blackmail. That's after 8,000 migrants arrived this week. Morocco has territorial claims over the Spanish enclave.
Spain accused Morocco of blackmail on Thursday over its passivity in the face of a migrant surge into its enclave of Ceuta. The rush began on Monday, when Morocco appeared to loosen border controls. Defense Minister Margarita Robles said Morocco had endangered lives by creating the conditions for thousands of migrants to enter. She said, "We will not accept any blackmail, no matter how small, or any questioning of our territorial integrity." Morocco has a territorial claim over Ceuta and Spain's other North African enclave, Melilla. Many see the move as retaliation for Spain's hosting of an independence leader. Brahim Ghali's Polisario Front is fighting for Western Sahara to be independent from Morocco. The Spanish government, however, has sought to keep the two issues separate, but one Moroccan minister suggested they were connected. He said on social media that Morocco had the right to lean back in response to such a reckless act. The Spanish opposition has strongly criticised Spain's government over the situation. The leader of opposition party Vox visited Ceuta on Wednesday.
Nos encontramos ante una auténtica invasión del territorio.
We are facing a real invasion of our national territory. An invasion directed and planned by a neighbouring country. An invasion that has brought thousands, mostly male at conscription age, to our country. Also many youngsters, minors who have been used as human bulldozers by Morocco.
This week, Spain detained as many as 8,000 migrants who swam into Ceuta or climbed over fences. It sent a majority of them back to Morocco. Spain is struggling to handle the 1,500 unaccompanied minors who can't be returned by law until their relatives can be found. Last year, about 2,000 migrants crossed into Ceuta and Melilla. Wednesday saw hundreds of migrants clash with Moroccan police on the other side of the border. Ceuta authorities say that no migrants crossed overnight into the city. This after Moroccan security forces in the neighbouring North African kingdom tightened the border. On Thursday morning, both sides of the border in Ceuta were mostly quiet and the beach deserted. Spanish troops patrolled on their side.
A new public body named Great British Railways will see control of trains and track brought together for the first time in decades. The government says the move will include reforms aimed at improving rail services.
The government has unveiled plans for a new railway operator in the biggest reform in a quarter of a century. Great British Railways, or GBR, will own and manage the rail infrastructure, run and maintain the network, and set most fares and timetables. The privatisation of British Rail saw the rail sector fragmented into a bewildering array of companies, fares and bosses. The government says it wants to deliver passenger-focused travel with simpler, modern fares and reliable services. Many reforms will be implemented before GBR is launched in 2023. Flexible season tickets will be introduced next month, offering savings for people who travel to work 2 or 3 times a week. There will also be a significant rollout of more pay-as-you-go, contactless and digital ticketing on smartphones, like the Oyster system currently used in London. The Transport Minister, in answering an MP's question, said,
So if her constituents make more than X number of journeys a week, it automatically prevents them from being charged more. So those are the sort of much more advanced ticketing plans, which would be much easier to do with Great British Railways because it will all be under one roof.
Private companies will operate most trains to timetables and fares specified by GBR. The Transport Salary Staffs Association dismissed the plan as papering over the cracks and said it would see money leak out of the industry. The Rail Delivery Group, which represents train operators, was positive about the reforms. We are ambitious to move quickly and work with government so that we can attract people back onto trains with better services and maximise the railway's contribution to the recovery. The pandemic has upended commuting, slashing ticket revenue. The government has already spent around £12 billion to keep services running. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, Victoria, London.
Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says British people should apply common sense when deciding to travel abroad. He said it's down to personal responsibility. Here's NTD's Jane Worrell with more.
The Transport Secretary is defending the UK's traffic light system for overseas travel. He said people should use common sense when deciding to travel abroad. The confusion comes as EasyJet reports a first half loss of around £700 million. People who travel to countries on the amber list have to quarantine at home for 10 days when coming back and take tests before and after travelling. Among the countries on the amber list are popular destinations Spain, France, Italy and Greece. Asked on Sky News about why holidays are being sold to amber list countries, Grant Shapps said the government had moved away from a system where things were banned and illegal to where people were expected to apply a bit of common sense. He said people should only go on holiday to green list countries. The only major tourist destination on the green list is Portugal. Jane Worrell, NTD News, London.
A police chief admits he'd prefer his family not to use a smart motorway. It comes as ministers are facing pressure to scrap using the hard shoulder as a live lane.
A police chief told MPs on Wednesday that he would prefer his loved ones not to travel on smart motorways. He said he would want his relatives to have the additional safety of a hard shoulder, which smart motorways do not have.
If I was pushed for an either or a binary decision, I would probably opt for the controlled motorway in terms of the additional facilities that provides from a policing perspective.
West Midlands Police Assistant Chief Constable Chris Todd oversees the force's motorway response patrols. Todd also warned smart motorways make it difficult for police to reach crash victims.
So if we have all lanes live, then we don't have that capability necessarily, and the traffic may be congested and covering all of those lanes. So that would slow our progress in many circumstances, but obviously we deal with that accordingly. Worst case scenario is when we just cannot get through the traffic.
Todd said sometimes police have to close a carriageway on the opposite side of the motorway and travel the wrong way to reach the victim. And this makes it unlikely police can reach the scene of an accident in their 10-minute target time. The Transport Committee is conducting an inquiry about the safety of smart motorways after several motorists lost their lives. The inquiry is ongoing.
An Equalities Chief says factors such as family, religious upbringing and discipline are leading students from ethnic groups to outperform white working-class students. He says he does not agree that ethnic minority pupils are likely to feel isolated at Oxford or Cambridge.
An Equalities Chief says the ethnic minority pupils outperform their white peers because of immigrant optimism. Chair of the Commission on Race and Ethnic Disparities, Tony Sewell, was questioned by MPs in an inquiry into why white working-class students underperform in education compared to other ethnic groups. Sewell said family, discipline and quality of schools are important factors in ethnic minority pupils' success.
And one of the factors I do think is in the family influence, how you motivate children upstream to really drive success. I do think that would be one key, and you can turn that into a policy.
Sewell says a religious upbringing can help children develop a sense of discipline. He says the rituals involved can help prepare children for the traditions of an Oxbridge university, such as formal dinners. Schul suggests state schools should have teachers dedicated to getting pupils inspired to enter top universities, as private schools do.
Maybe we have those kinds of teachers or that kind of resource in our state schools. Maybe it's shared within an academy or whatever, but really working with those young people from upstream, beginning to build that aspiration with them, but particularly with their families.
Schul says white pupils from disadvantaged backgrounds are more likely to succeed if their family values higher education.
And that's another intervention, that you work with the families to understand the real value of higher education. And we think that would work particularly with white pupils from poor backgrounds.
He says the government should strengthen families and give them resources so that they can really help young people.
New data suggests that demand for buying city centre flats is making a comeback. York, Birmingham, Glasgow, Cardiff and Manchester are all part of the latest trend. NTD's Patrick Hayden has the story.
City centre living is making a comeback, with demand for purchases increasing 39% since January. Property website Rightmove says York, Norwich, Sheffield, Birmingham, Glasgow, Cardiff and Manchester are seeing a jump in demand in their city centres. These areas have experienced increasing buyer demand since the start of 2021. Rightmove says larger family homes have been the strongest performers over the last year, but now it's shifting to flats. The website measures demand by the number of requests to estate agents via the site. Rightmove says the government-backed 5% deposit mortgage guarantee scheme is helping boost demand. It surveyed 1,000 of its users and found nearly 1 in 5 say they are using the scheme or are planning to use it. Patrick Hayden, NTD News, London.
An Oxford college said it will not take down the statue of 19th century businessman Cecil Rhodes due to regulatory and financial challenges. A campaign to remove the statue gathered attention amid Black Lives Matter protests in the summer of 2020.
Cecil Rhodes was a businessman and politician in southern Africa during the 19th century. Left-wing groups have been campaigning to remove his statue because they say it represents white supremacy and racism. Their campaign has recently gained renewed attention amid the Black Lives Matter movement. But Oriel College said on Thursday, in light of the regulatory and financial challenges, the college's governing body has decided not to begin the legal process for the relocation of the memorials. Education Secretary Gavin Williamson welcomed the decision, calling it sensible and balanced. He said we should learn from our past rather than censoring history and continue focusing on reducing inequality.
Still to come, the US Biden administration is lifting sanctions on Russia's Nord Stream 2 pipeline, bringing Russian gas to Germany. Find out more after the break.